This lesson is going to look at the page setup command, which can be used as I am using it here after I have created the document. But often you want to use it before as you are starting to set up your document. Choose File, Page Setup, and within this Page Setup dialog box, you have 4 tabs. Let's start off here with the Margins tab. We have a preview area representing our document, and you will notice that if I change, say, this top margin, at the moment set at 1 inch, but I could click on this little up arrow, the up arrow of this spinner, to increase that margin setting. There it is now at 2 inches, and you can see in the preview area how that has changed. Alternatively, if I didn't want to use these spinners, I could simply double click on the number that already exists, overtype with a different number. As soon as I click into a different cell here, it applies that change to my preview. I'm going to set this back to 1, and I can do something similar here with the bottom margin. I can change its setting, and again you can see how that's changing in the preview area, and the same with the left and the right. This gutter option makes an allowance that if your document is going to be bounced, for example with the Facing Pages document, if I click on the off spinner, you will notice in the preview area what is happening. I'll set this back down, and the gutter is reduced down to 0. So if you are planning on binding your document, you can set the gutter to whatever is an appropriate amount. We have also got here headers and footers. The header at moment is set at half an inch from the top, and the footer is set at half an inch on the bottom. Again, if you want to change these settings, just use the spinners or type in your value, and again in a later lesson we will be setting up headers and footers. There are 2 check boxes here for mirroring your margins. If I check this, notice how I no longer have left and right, but these 2 options here have changed to inside and outside, and my preview area has changed as well. I could increase the inside margin, and you will see how that affects the preview. Or alternatively, I could increase the gutter, and that has a similar effect. In other words, the text is pushed away from those inside edges. There is no right or wrong way of doing this. You can choose for yourself whether you are setting up a document like this, which is going to be bound, a Facing Pages document with mirror margins, whether you want to increase the inside margins or increase the gutter to accommodate the binding. If I uncheck mirror margins, these 2 options get set back to left and to right. The second check box is 2 pages per sheet. When you check on this box, you get 2 pages on 1 sheet. You can also use this for binding and different settings. Here are 2 boxes for gutter position, one for the left and one for the top. The final option in this particular tab is whether you're going to apply your changes to the whole document or from this point forward. So wherever your cursor is in the document, your changes will be applied from that particular point onwards within your document. Let's have a look at Paper Size tab. Here you can check which paper size you want by clicking, and you can scroll down until you find the relevant size. So if I wanted A4, I could choose that option, and you will notice in the preview area there's been a slight adjustment. Here I have got the actual width and the height, but obviously I could customize these if I wanted. I can also change the orientation of my page from portrait to landscape and back again. And any of these changes can be applied again to the whole document or this point forward. So if my cursor was on a particular page and it was only that page I wanted to change into landscape, I could change the landscape option here from this point forward. I'm going to set my document back to portrait, and let's have a look at Paper Source. This refers to the source of paper from your printer. So for example, if you needed your first page printed on the sheet paper that needs to be manually fed, you could choose this option for your first page, and for all the other pages choose, for example, the upper tray. But once again, I'm going to stick with my default tray options, and finally we will go on to layout, where you can control how your different sections within the document start. Now we have got a whole lesson devoted to sections later on, so we will see how to use this in context at that point. Here you can set up your headers and footers to be different odd or even, which is what you would use if you are mirroring your margins. So you might want your header on your left hand page to include, say, a page number in the top left hand corner, and your header on right hand corner to include a page number in the top right hand corner, in which case you would need to check your different odd and even checkbox. And you might also want to specify to a different first page for your document. For example, a first page that doesn't actually have a header and footer. With this option here, you can set up your vertical alignment, having your text centered or justified or vertically aligned at the top. And you can also specify line number by clicking on this button. If you check the option to add line numbering, you can specify the start number, the distance from the text, and the incremental count. And here you can specify whether you want to restart your line numbering on each page, for each section, or make it continuous throughout your document. I'll click cancel to return to the document. The next button we have is borders, which we will have a look at a later stage. Click cancel, go to file, page setup. The final button that we look at is this default button. If you make changes to any or all of these tabs, you can then click the default button, which will specify here that you are about to change your default settings for your page setup. This means that any new documents created which are based on the normal templates, and your normal template is used by default each time you click on this new button here in the toolbar. So you are using it rarely without even realizing it. So any new documents created will be based on the changes that you have made in this page setup dialog box. So if you have made changes and you want to keep these changes for all new documents, then click this yes button. If you do not, if the changes that you have made are for this particular document that you are working on or creating at the moment, then click no, and don't click the default button again. Having made all of your changes, you can now click OK to return to your document, and those changes are applied.